So, for the Ozarks Alliance to End Homelessness, there are two forms of monitoring. There is quarterly monitoring and annual monitoring. You can find all documents for both the quarterly monitoring and the annual monitoring on the Ozarks Alliance to End Homelessness website on communitypartnershipoftheozarks.org. If you scroll down through the website, you will come to a section on annual monitoring. So this is Mo 600 HUD CoC monitoring. If you are receiving HUD CoC funding, this is where you will likely go to find that information. So you will find the overall monitoring policy here. And then for quarterly monitoring, you will find the quarterly monitoring guide. So this will happen 4 times a year for the quarter, and you can find information on how to get the appropriate reports and things like that through this guide. For annual monitoring, you will find 2 documents. You will first find the annual monitoring guide. And this guide will open up sort of just the purpose of monitoring for the continuum of care, how you will receive feedback on monitoring, and you will also find your points of contact. So your HUD CoC administrative team is made up of Bob from the City of Springfield, Glenda from the City of Springfield, and Emily from Community Partnership of the Ozarks. You will also find sort of the expectations for annual monitoring and then the procedures. There are 2 components to the annual monitoring process. The first is going to be the HUD CoC administrative team reaching out to your agency to establish a time frame for the team to come into your agency and do on-site financial monitoring. So on-site financial monitoring will need to be scheduled in advance. Annual monitoring will typically happen about 1 month prior to your grant expiration date. So you can keep an eye on your email, and when the HUD administrative team reaches out to you to schedule that on-site monitoring and let you know that it is time for annual monitoring, they will provide the appropriate information and resources in that email. You will also find in the procedures information about sort of an annual monitoring checklist. So while the HUD administrative team will come on site to your agency to do on-site financial monitoring, there will also be a component of the annual monitoring process that the agencies are required to fill out and complete. And so this information will walk you through sort of the process of completing that. But you can also find those documents at the end of the guide as an appendix. So here is what the annual monitoring checklist looks like, that this is what you will turn in and complete as a part of the annual monitoring process. Then Appendix B is the client file checklist. This client file checklist will help you and your agency staff complete the section of the checklist that needs to be returned to the continuum of care here on client file requirements. So where it says files have required documentation, in order to determine whether or not your files have the appropriate documentation, you can locate that here in the annual monitoring guide at Appendix B, the client file checklist. So here we'll list the client files by item and let you know if you do or don't have those things and if they are up to date. So obviously the HMIS release of information needs to be current. So if that HMIS release of information or that ROI is expired, then you will need to get a new one. And so that would be something that all client files are not up to date. There is something that needs improvement. So when completing the annual monitoring checklist, you will go ahead and fill out these different sections. And you can find the actual checklist that you will turn into the continuum of care here under the annual monitoring checklist. By clicking on this, you can go ahead and download this to your computer, and then you can fill this information out and then return by email to the HUD CoC administrative team by the deadline indicated in the email correspondence. When you are completing the annual monitoring checklist, you will need to complete agency name, grant number, the grant name, start and end dates for your grant, if this grant is a new grant or a renewal grant, and the total grant award amount. And then at the time that the annual monitoring checklist is being completed, what the remaining balance of that grant is. And then the date that you are completing this checklist. When you are completing the checklist, you will need to have 2 agency staff reviewing all of these different components. So the categories on the left will let you know what needs to be filled in. And you can find, again, this information for the client files in the annual monitoring guide, and that is footnoted here at the bottom. So when you are completing it, you will have program requirements, client file requirements, and agency requirements. So the S, NI, and AC will let you know at the bottom here what that is. So if it is something that you have when agency 1 and agency 2, or agency staff 1 and agency staff 2 are reviewing this, you will indicate whether it is satisfactory, needs improvement, or is an area of concern. And you can also indicate any notes. So if you do put something about needs improvement or is an area of concern, please indicate why here in the notes section. Once all of these items have been reviewed, the agency staff, both person 1 and person 2, will sign off in the appropriate columns for each item. Then on the second page, once 2 agency staff have reviewed all of those, there is a signature page. On this second page, you will need to indicate what agency you are a part of, what grant number this is for, and then you will need to either have the executive director or an authorized representative of your agency fill this next section out. Whoever that executive director or authorized representative of your agency is, which cannot be the same person who signs off on page 1, they will go ahead and sign on this line. They will print their name here, and then they will indicate what their formal title is, if they are an executive director, a program director, or something of that nature. And then they will go ahead and get in contact with a notary. Many agencies already have notaries on staff. If you don't have a notary on staff, you can work with your local bank. They have notaries on staff. Otherwise, Community Partnership of the Ozarks also has a notary available. So just communicate with the HUD CoC administrative team that you need access to a notary, and we will go ahead and set up a time for this to be notarized. This next section here, starting on this date of, this will go ahead and be filled out by the notary. So this section here, this last half of the page, will all be completed by the notary. Once you have had your 2 agencies sign off on all these things, verifying that they have the appropriate documents, including all the items located in the client file checklist, then you can go ahead and have your authorized representative or executive director fill out this top portion of the annual monitoring signature page and then get it notarized here at the bottom. Once all of those things are completed, this annual monitoring checklist will need to be sent back to the HUD CoC administrative team by the deadline indicated in the email correspondence. So you can go ahead and email this back to the HUD CoC administrative team. Again, you can find who those people are in the annual monitoring guide located here at points of contact. Once all of that is completed, then the HUD CoC administrative team will review it and let you know if there's any further action needed.